A few years back, one lens was an absolute staple in the filmmaking and photography community, the trusty Sigma 18-35 f1.8. Well, today we are taking a look at the long-awaited full-frame successor. This is the Sigma 28-45mm f1.8 DG-DN. This is a pretty unique lens, as there aren't too many ultra-fast zooms like this for full frame on the market currently. With how insanely popular the 18-35 was, it makes sense why Sigma have chosen to create this lens. However, how affordable the 18-35 was and how versatile EF mount is are massive parts of why that lens was so popular. The 28-45mm is going to be priced at £1,299. So while it doesn't offer quite as much value as the 18-35 did, considering it's a full frame modern lens, it could be a good value depending on how it performs. So let's take a look at it and see if it's a worthy successor to the legendary 18-35. To test out the 28-45, we created a little video about one of our in-house technical consultants, Matteo. For this, we used the lens with the Sony Burano, capturing some controlled shots, an interview, and some run and gun style shots of him conducting some demos in our beautiful central London showroom.
What I do love about my job is that CVP is at the forefront of, cinematography, and we have probably the best cameras and lenses, and we have access to all the latest kit. Finding solutions for the customers and maybe helping them out when they need a lens the next day or the rig the next day, we can facilitate that, and making customers happy, putting a smile on their face when they didn't know something. I really enjoy that. It's a massive learning curve for me as well, with people might come with ideas that I've never thought of. It's almost like a two-way street.
As you'd expect from a Sigma lens, the images are detailed and clean of optical aberrations. But it's certainly not a small lens. However, given its constant f1.8 aperture, I think that's not too surprising. It's roughly 153mm long, a touch less than 88mm wide, and has a filter thread of 82mm. The E-mount version we have here weighs 950 grams, which is roughly 215 grams more than Sigma's 24-70 Mark II for E-mount. It's made from a similar mix of metal and plastics to previous Sigma art lenses, has 2 focus hold buttons, is dust and moisture resistant, and zooms internally, which is really nice to see. At release, it will be available in E and L mount, but hopefully we get to see an RF version too. This new lens has a focus, zoom and iris ring, which all feel nice and smooth. However, the zoom direction is opposite to Sony's lenses, so this is something you may have to get used to if you're coming from their lenses. As a video shooter, it's great to see a declickable aperture ring, as it makes smooth aperture pulls much nicer. However, if you want to control the lens regularly, you can by placing it into the A position. The 28-45 features Sigma's most up-to-date focusing motors, which means that it is focused by wire. Given that it's been designed around mirrorless mounts, this isn't too surprising. As with Sigma's second version of their 24-70 art, this new lens will perform differently between E and L mount cameras. On E mount cameras currently, manual focusing is non-linear. This is not the case when you use the L mount version. I really wish this was something that Sony would enable in their menus for third-party lenses, as currently, this makes manual focusing very inconsistent. Otherwise, manually focusing the lens is nice. It's smooth and the ring has a good amount of resistance to it. I just wish it could be linear on E mount cameras. For L mount users though, your experience will be much better. For our autofocus testing, we chucked the 28-45 on our Sony Burano. And looking at the footage across the different focal lengths, we can see it tracks Sam well, even wide open, with him running at the camera. It performs really well across all the situations we've put it into, and given how popular autofocus has now become, this is really good to see. If you want to see these and the rest of our tests in full, head over to our Vimeo where we'll be releasing the tests in full in better quality. The 28-45 has a consistent close focus of 30cm throughout its focal range. Looking at our tests, we can see that throughout the range it performs really well, with only a touch of CA and good overall sharpness. For our parfocal testing, I zoomed in, focused, and then went through the marked focal ranges until we hit the wide end. Throughout the lens, you can see shifts as we zoom out, and it does lose critical focus when we hit 28mm. If you are wanting to capture a shot that requires a parfocal lens with this, I would recommend enabling autofocus. The 28-45 has been designed for full-frame cameras, which means it should have an image circle of roughly 43.467mm. We unfortunately can't capture E-mount lenses for our lens tool, however I still conducted our regular coverage tests. This meant I shot tests at 28, 30, 35 and 45 at f1.8 and f4, and then at close focus and infinity. For the light difference between the two, we adjusted our shutter speed, so any light change is the lens changing the amount of light as settings are consistent. We also shot with the in-camera illumination corrections on and off, so we can see how much of a difference this makes. With the profiles off, you can see a clear difference in illumination across the zoom range when wide open. Its illumination is clearly much better stopped down to f4. With the correction turned on, you can see the biggest difference wide open, with the correction at f4 being pretty minimal. When in video, this difference of correction on and off is less noticeable as you are cropping the image so much compared to these 3x2 stills. If you want to keep up with the latest and greatest kit, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to buy anything you see in this video, or want to get your hands on this new lens or any other kit for that matter, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. Let's take a look at the image it produces, starting with our bokeh headshot examples. Performance is decently consistent across the range here. At 28mm wide open, we can see that our autofocus highlights have the defined edge with a touch of glow around the highlights. We can see a little bit of texture in our highlight too, but not too much. This kind of character is consistent as we stop down, but I would say that at 5.6, the edges look a little bit more defined. Throughout the zoom range, this character stays very consistent. When it comes to shape, we can see some cutting towards the edges of frame wide open and at f2.8 across the range. At f4 this is improved and we can see a more consistent shape towards the corners. So it can produce some nice clean modern looking bokeh, which isn't too surprising. A lens's flare characteristic is a very subjective thing. For these examples, you grabbed a torch and blasted down the barrel of the lens. We tried to keep the torch in the same position but did move the camera slightly as we changed focal length. Throughout the range we can see that the flare is decently consistent. It looks well controlled and pleasing. As we said earlier, if you want to see the full uncut examples of these flare tests, I've put a link to our video of them on our Vimeo in the description below. Right, let's take a look at how the lenses perform in regards to transverse aberration. Starting at 28mm, we can see a little bit of pinky red aberration before our point of focus and greeny blue afterwards. This performance stays decently consistent as we head towards the longer end of the zoom, though I think at the long end it shifts a little more yellow and blue than the other focal lengths. Overall performance looks good here though. Let's do some pixel peeping of our focus chart. For all of this testing, we paired the 28-45 with a Sony Burano in its 8K 16:9 mode, and we moved our camera further away from the chart to try and match framing as much as we can between the different focal lengths. Starting at 28mm in the centre, it resolves incredibly well, even wide open. We can see minimal CA and only a minimal improvement in performance when stopping down. At 35mm, we can see good resolving power, but a touch of purple CA. Stopping down reduces this though, and improves sharpness overall. At 40mm in the centre, it's a little bit softer than the previous focal lengths, but it does bite up at around f2. It also has a little bit of CA wide open, which has gone at f2 as well. At 45mm, it performs well with a small touch of CA. This goes as soon as you stop down, and performance is good overall. Looking at the corners of the lens, it's very impressive. Across the range, we can see a little bit of fall off towards the corners, but it's very minimal. Stopping down a little really improves the overall sharpness across the range though. Overall, it's a very sharp lens, which performs as well as you would expect from a Sigma art lens. For our distortion testing, we shot some images with an FX3 in its 3x2 stills mode. I shot these with the in-camera corrections on and off so we can see how the lens behaves between them. With the corrections off, we can see barrel distortion at 28mm, a little bit of pincushion at 35mm, even stronger pincushion at 40mm, and then even more at 45mm. With the corrections turned on, we can see that all of this distortion is pretty much gone. So if you don't want this performance, just make sure you have corrections turned on in camera when shooting or when processing your image in a program like Lightroom. For these breathing examples, we stopped down to f5.6 and shot at 24, 35, 40 and 45mm, putting through the entire focus range. So this may be a bit more exaggerated than real world focus pulls. Throughout the range we can see breathing, but I would say it looks worse at the wide end than it is at the telly. The Sigma 28-45 1.8 is an interesting lens. When Sigma told me a successor to the 18-35 was coming, I was pumped. That lens is legendary, but I think that was because of the filmmaking landscape needs at the time, its size, EF mount, and incredible price to performance ratio. The 28-45 1.8 is an awesome lens and does give a similar experience to shooting with the 18-35. However, it is a good bit more expensive at £1,299, isn't quite as versatile with E and L mount options only, and it is quite large. But I think for photographers and filmmakers reacting to the light and environment in front of them when they are shooting, this will be an awesome flexible lens to have. I think events, live music, corporate and wedding shooters could all benefit from this lens as its range is decently versatile, especially if you are shooting with multiple camera bodies. I really do wish that the focus rotation was linear on E-mount cameras. as I still do like pulling focus manually sometimes. Fortunately, it performs really well with modern Sony autofocus systems though. And if you're an L-mount user, this isn't something you have to worry about. Anyway, if you're interested in picking up one for yourself, I've put links to our website in the description below. If you have any further questions about the lens, let us know down in the comments below. And if you like the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. And thank you so much for watching.